What if you were an adult content actress who finally got a chance to shine in Hollywood? The problem is that someone from your past starts chasing you and kills all your friends one by one. Now it's a matter of time before you're next on the list. What would you do in this situation? This is the story of Maxine, a movie released in 2024, and that concludes the trilogy started with X and Pearl, two movies that I really love. In today's video, I'll recap this movie and give you the best hints to beat the bad guy and save Maxine from becoming mincemeat. Before we start, subscribe to the channel to check the next videos, and please give a little slap on the like button. The movie begins when we see a recording showing a young Maxine dancing in front of the camera. Her father, who is a fanatic pastor, asks what she will do in the future, and Maxine replies that she will be just like her father. I don't know, but I really think that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, boy.
Anyway, the story then jumps to the year of 1985 when we find out that Los Angeles is being terrorized by the Night Stalker, a guy who kidnaps girls and takes her lives in satanic rituals. Who is okay with this situation is Maxine, who has faced much worse things in life. In this case, two crazy old people that together slashed her 5 friends in a farm in Texas. Maxine is now 33 years old and desperately wants to leave the adult film industry as she's trying to get a role for a Hollywood movie called The Puritan 2. This film is going to be directed by Elizabeth, a British woman who wants to prove to the studio executives that she is capable of doing it as well as Spielberg. Initially, she doesn't put much faith in Maxine, but the girl does well in the audition and gets the part. The good news come from Teddy Knight's mouth, her agent, and who will always be our esteemed Gus Fring from Breaking Bad.
You're goddamn right.
Anyway, Maxine gets all bouncing and shares the news with Amber, a friend who also works for hard men, if you know what I mean. The girl is happy for her friend and invites Maxine to a rich man's party that will take place in Los Angeles Valley, the most exclusive part of the city. However, Maxine has to pay the rent and needs to work in a second job, in this case, a dirty dancing glass stand, where she shows her best moves for the naughtiest men in town. She doesn't see who's on the other side of the glass, because if she knew, she would be in shock, since there's a guy all hooded in black who seems very angry for some reason. Later on, she goes on a walk with Tabby, another sexy dancer, who says she also dreams of being a Hollywood actress. Tabby asks if she wants to go to a party that coincidentally will take place in the Valley too. However, Maxine refuses again and ends up not realizing that the two friends are going to the same place. She tries to go home, but unfortunately she's alone and walking in an isolated part of the city at night, which is a terrible decision when the Night Stalker is slicing up women around.
Great success.
This is when I ask myself, what is she entering a dark alley now? There's no one passing by at this moment. Even if the serial killer hadn't been working that night, it's still an unnecessary risk to take. If you look closely, Maxine lives in an apartment right in front of a busy avenue, so she could walk along the main streets, which were well lit and infested with pedestrians. Screw it, because she realizes that the gate on the other side is locked at the same time a weird man arrives behind her back. Fake Chaplin is armed with a pocket knife and admits he's going to hurt her. Bad for him, he didn't count that Maxine had been armed all this time. With the advantage, Maxine looks at him with a mocking face and tells Fake Chaplin to take off his clothes.
I'm cold.
After the free strip show, she orders him to clean her pistol with saliva, what he does. The thing is, Maxine is a bad to the bone and teaches Fake Chaplin how to make a nice nuts juice, but unfortunately with ingredients that come right off from him. Later on that night, we see the girl watching a movie with Leon, her friend, and the only man who isn't trying to get inside her pants, since the guy is very gay. Suddenly, someone knocks on her door. Maxine opens it, but finds no one there. She then looks down and finds an old tape on the floor. The fiery girl plays it and recognizes the movie is the same one she tried to shoot in Texas during the first movie. This causes the girl to panic, since the police never found out who killed all those people back then. Fearing she would have been placed as the only suspect, Maxine decided to change her last name, misleading the Texas police in the process. In order to avoid her story to resurface, Maxine asks Leon to find out where the tape came from. Since that tape model is old, Leon says he can call some friend to see if they know anything about it. In the meantime, we get to meet meet LA detectives Williams and Torres. They are called by forensics because Amber and Tabby bodies were found in a park. What draws the most attention is that the two have a Satan symbol marked on their faces, making the police suspect that they were victims of the Night Stalker. Meanwhile, we see that the Puritan 2 production heating up as an employee is taking a mold of Maxine's head. The problem is that the girl is starting to remembering the past and imagines that the old mummy called Pearl is again taking advantage of her defenseless body. This leaves her in shock, and things only get worse when one of the production guys advises her not to disrespect Director Elizabeth's orders, since the woman is a diva on set. Our hero gets confused due to the helpfulness of the employee. That's when he says he's a big fan of her previous work. Besides that, she realizes that someone left a note on the car windshield telling Maxine to go to a hotel, otherwise her secret from the past will come to light. Our hero agrees to go and eventually meets John Labatt there, a private detective who says that he was hired by a man who wants to meet her face-to-face in his mansion. Maxine says she will think about it and goes back home where the two detectives pay her a visit. However, Maxine isn't into cops that much and tells them to off. Now let's think about something. LAPD must have been crap in the 80s. I say it because Maxine's two closest friends became lunchboxes in a very sadistic way. So there was a possibility that the actress would be next victim on the list, especially because she worked in both places where the other girls also did. Therefore, the detectives should have put the woman in some witness protection program or something like that. As if the problem couldn't get any worse, we see that religious fanatics are protesting against the studio that is making the Puritan 2, as the protesters think the movie is part of devil's work. Maxine looks at them with contempt as the group reminds of her father. Later on, we see Maxine being taken for a ride with Elizabeth, who once again says she wants to prove herself as a respected director. They arrive at a haunted mansion that will serve as a set for their movie, but what draws the most attention is another set that is right in the middle. In this case, the Bates Motel, the same place where Psycho was filmed. Elizabeth reveals the motel was used to shoot Psycho 2, a movie that almost everyone wants to forget. Anyway, Maxine begins to have another vision with Pearl, seeing her in the window of the mansion set. The girl's distraction catches Elizabeth's attention, who tells her that she must be 100% focused on the role she got. Otherwise, the director may change her mind and hire the second best actress, who almost got the role. The problem is that it's hard to concentrate when there's a private detective following you around town. Maxine obviously notices John's presence in the car behind and decides to have a hot chat with him, which is a metaphor for beating the crap out of him. As soon as night falls, things get a little out of hand. I really mean it, as we watch Leon getting distracted while he reads a comic book. That's when a horny grandpa arrives and makes an indecent proposal to him. Leon says he left the business a long time ago and closes the video store. The problem is that before doing this, a good professional should make sure that there are no more customers in the store, which he obviously didn't do.
So he's an idiot.
Unfortunately for Leon, there was still one more there, who clearly wasn't satisfied with customer service because Leon gets stabbed in the nape and is brutally finished afterwards. Man, I'm really trying to beat this movie, but in this situation, there's not much to do since Leon is pretty dumb and instead of working, prefers to read some crap. On the next day, Maxine finds out that Leon is already on his way to the light at the end of the tunnel, which convinces her to talk with the detectives. In the morgue, she also is told about the girls who were killed, but even after that, Maxine refuses to cooperate and leaves the place. As she had to testify, Maxine gets late for the movie shooting and is crucified by Elizabeth. In the break, she meets Emily in Paris, another actress working on the Puritan. She advises Maxine to give everything she has since Elizabeth ends up being loyal to those who work well for her. Before saying goodbye, Emily says that she was invited to a party in the valley, which once again should have caught Maxine's attention if she hadn't been into Snow White the entire story. Who also appears to take revenge is the beaten detective, who decides to take personal revenge on Maxine. The guy manages to enter the studio carrying a gun and starts chasing the actress. Man, she already knows that a maniac is chasing her and her friends, so can anyone tell me why she isn't carrying her gun? If she'd done that, Maxine would be able to defend herself. You can say she could lose her job if security caught her with the gun, but bro, 3 people in her social circle have been wiped out in the last 2 days. Therefore, I think survival should be the priority around here. Fortunately, our hero manages to hide in the haunted house set, which gives time for the security to put the detective on the run. After clocking out to enjoy Friday night, Maxine meets the pain in the arse director, who gives the actress one last chance. She asks Maxine to solve whatever is tormenting her that weekend so she can focus on work. As Maxine fears she'll lose her only shot, she goes to Gus's office and asks if she can trust him. The guy says yes, and then he hears her story. The agent says he has dealt with stuff like this before and assure he'll do his best to find out who the private detective's client is. The two then come up with a plan, which consists of Maxine going to a club only to be followed by the detective, who is not aware of the scam. The idiot takes the bait and follows her to the toilet, from where Maxine escapes using the window. The guy gets furious and goes after her, but is knocked out by Gus's henchman. When he wakes up, John finds himself inside the car in the middle of a dismantlement. Obviously, he, being the good swindler that he is, tries to apologize to Maxine. However, the woman says that God is the one who forgives and pushes the button to turn the driver and the car into scrap. In this situation, the only thing the detective could have done was to have used his feet to lean on the car dashboard to force his body weight back. There was a chance he could have pulled the steering wheel, which in theory would allow him to escape. After that, he would have to be quick, since Gus's henchman is holding two monstrous Dobermans, but at least he would have a chance. Screw him, because he prefers to pray to Jesus and ends up being crushed. Maxine goes home and sees a report about the Night Stalker, learning of the population's desire for someone to take justice into their own hands, which finally makes the girl realize that her 3 friends were killed in parties that took place in the city's valley. The woman then goes to the address that the crushed detective gave and enters the mansion. There, she sees the same footage from the beginning of the film, where the young Maxine talks to her father. That's when the plot reveals that the hooded man in black was actually Pastor Ernest Miller, Maxine's own father.
I am your father.
His goal was to eliminate the bad influences that surrounded his daughter. In this case, the 3 girls and Leon too, who, due being gay, was seen as a sinner by the pastor's fervent belief. The problem is that Maxine is so shocked that she ends up handing the gun to her father, and in the middle of the revelation knocks on a briefcase, seeing that it contained Emily and Paris' little body, all cut for takeaway. Before Maxine can react, the pastor suffocates her with a plastic bag. A few minutes later, she wakes up just to find herself trapped in the mansion's garden. Ernest shows up surrounded by fanatical followers who are carrying cinematographic equipment. Ernest's plan is to film him exorcising Maxine so he can prove that his daughter had only entered the adult film industry because she had been possessed all this time. Not only that, but the pastor had been pulling the strings, as we learn that he told his followers to protest against studios in town, since he also considered that Hollywood was destroying family values through movies.
What?
As Ernest gets ready to do the exorcism, we see the dumb police detectives arriving at the party. Since they had been secretly following Maxine all this time, they order the believers to surrender, but the pastor says that the police are accomplices in the sins of humanity, which makes the faithful men draw their weapons and shoot the cops. A bizarre war scene starts, and the only thing I noticed here is that the believers are very bad at aiming, since they are in 8 against 2, but somehow manage to miss all the shots, which makes the cops arrange a meeting between them and the devil downstairs. In the meantime, Maxine remembers that she had a knife in the pocket, which the girl uses to cut the ropes. Now I ask myself, couldn't she have used the same knife to finish her father the moment he caught her with the bag? Her hands were unoccupied, so she would have enough mobility to draw the pocket knife and end this story sooner. Screw that, because she breaks free, however ends up being pulled into the pool, where a believer refuses to die. The woman is tough and stabs Ozzy Osbourne wannabe in the nose. In this beef, we see Detective Torres simply deciding to go after the pastor alone, which makes no sense, since his partner was right next door and could have gone along too. After all, splitting up is always a bad idea. Forget it, because Williams asks Maxine to wait for the cavalry to arrive, which goes in one ear and out the other, since the pastor's daughter wants to settle accounts with daddy, and to do it picks up a shotgun lying on the ground. She then hears some gunshots on the hill towards the famous Hollywood sign and discovers that the pastor managed to hit Detective Torres, who could very well have survived if he had been wearing something on his chest called a bulletproof vest.
Nobody cares.
Williams asks Maxine to stop the ketchup leaking from Torres's veins. Yeah, I'm sure it will take more than 2 hands to do so. Screw that, because Torres is not coming back for the sequel. Anyway, Maxine hears more gunshot noise and goes towards it, only to see Detective Williams saying that she managed to get the pastor. Unfortunately, affection was reciprocated, since she also took a crucifix in her eye. The woman falls and rolls down the hill. I don't really know why this happened, but I think I'll have to put the police officer in the kill count as well. Finally, Maxine sees Dad lying on the ground who's barely alive. The guy says that his biggest sin was having failed to raise his daughter. However, she says that it was not failure but success, since the pastor's actions will make Maxine achieve fame, which she considers as divine intervention. The woman finally resolves the beef with the past and blasts Daddy's head. At the end of the movie, we find out that the Night Stalker was arrested. If you don't know, this guy existed in real life and haunted Los Angeles for much of the 80s. His name was Richard Ramirez, who had been accused of killing 15 women. The crazy man met his end in 2013 while he waited for his execution after being sentenced to life in prison. Speaking of Maxine, she imagines herself giving interviews about her own life and dilemma with her father, and even being nominated for an Oscar at the famous Chinese theater, where the ceremony takes place every year. However, all of this was nothing more than an illusion in Maxine's mind, who still hasn't reached that level of fame. For some reason, she was not arrested for blowing up her father and is still shooting The Puritan 2. Elizabeth then asks what the next step in Maxine's career will be now that her name is everywhere. The actress replies that she just wants people to keep talking about her so that the fame never goes away. Maxine had good reviews from critics and audiences, but of the trilogy started with X, this is the one I like the least. The positive points are due to the setting of Los Angeles in the 80s, which the director managed to recreate in a way that I never imagined was possible, from the architecture, the costumes, and all the aesthetics in general. In addition, movie soundtrack is impeccable, both in relation to the songs that were chosen and the orchestrated themes themselves, which really dive into those cop movies from that decade, such as Lethal Weapon and Beverly Hills Cop. On the other hand, I wasn't surprised by Mia Goth's performance, who put on a show in the previous 2 films. The only thing I could feel was a dislike for the character's behavior. I don't put the blame on the acting, but on the script instead, which is very disappointing and the lowest point of the movie. In my head, the plot would have a whole cat and mouse tension, where Maxine would be chased by Night Stalker. In the end, the script is so predictable that in the very first scene where she talks to her father, I had already deduced that the pastor would come back as the main villain. It's like I always say, the script is the movie soul, and since this one didn't please me, I'll have to give Maxine a 6.5 out of 10. At the box office, my opinion was not reflected, since it was the highest grossing of the trilogy, with the budget being around $1 million, while the revenue closed at approximately $20 million, which has already made director Ty West say that he might be working on a 4th movie in the future. If you want to see this 4th one being beaten in the channel, hit the like button and leave on the comments the following sentence: I want it. Also consider following me on Instagram on @Edabarros so we can have a quick chat. Without further ado, let's go to the kill count. Maxine had 16 bodies on the ground, with the golden trophy going to the private detective kill. I hope you liked it. See you on the next video, and bye.